Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Chris S. Cornell is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out his first appearance on episode 325 of Boundless Body Radio. Chris Cornell used to weigh 278 pounds at age 51 when he realized that he had to take action to improve his health. After reading Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes, he started to understand the benefits of a low carbohydrate diet, and he finally got down to a normal weight for the first time in his adult life. Chris's concept, The Biggest Comeback, is a platform for Chris's community of individuals seeking inspiration, knowledge, and support on their own transformative journeys. Through his website and weekly Biggest Comeback email, he shares his personal experiences, insights, and practical tips, providing a roadmap for others who wish to make sustainable changes in their lives. Chris's commitment extends beyond his own transformation as he engages in thought provoking conversations, interviews experts, and connects with practitioners and researchers in the health, wellness, and self improvement space. By sharing these interactions, Chris ensures that the biggest comeback remains a reliable source of information and valuable resources. Chris Cornell, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back. I always enjoy speaking with you, so thanks for having me on.
It's an honor to chat with you. It was really fun to chat with you last week on the on Phil's channel that you're doing interviews on, and you do always such great interviews. I purposely used an older version of your introduction because you've got a lot to update us on, including your coaching practices and all kinds of stuff that you've been doing, which I'm really excited to chat with you about today. But before we kind of review your own personal story and we get to some of that other stuff, I did want to ask you. You and I were both attending the Symposium for Metabolic Health 2025 in San Diego, and I always like to kind of do little mini reviews of particular conferences that we've been to. So I just want to ask you, like, how was your experience? How did you find the conference? I know last year you attended virtually. You weren't able to come to San Diego, which was quite the schlep for you anyway. But yeah, how did it compare this year to last year being in person? You were definitely very busy, I could tell you that. But how did you find the conference?
I thought it was another outstanding conference. I love the Low Carb USA and Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners symposiums. They have been doing these for a long time. This was the 10th annual symposium in San Diego, and it was great. And beyond the excellent presentations, which, as I mentioned before this program, I didn't get to focus as sharply on the presentations in person because I was multitasking, doing a lot of work for Low Carb USA during the conference. But I will have the chance to go back and listen to the recordings, which I sometimes listen to some of these recordings 2 or more times, or at least parts of them. There's so much good stuff in there, and one of the things I love about the conference is interacting and engaging with other people, both practitioners, lay people, coaches, you name it, eating dinners, under the stars, beautiful weather of San Diego, and having a great low carb meal while just talking about, oh, careers and specific things that happened during the day, and just catching up with people like yourself. I had the chance to interview you for a brief segment, which was great. But I got to talk to so many people at the conference, Dr. Brian Lenskis, Dr. Ben Bokikio, who I'll be interviewing tomorrow for a live stream. And it goes on and on. I mean, there's just so many people that I haven't seen in a while, and catching up is great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the networking is super fun, catching up with people that we've, talked to or met virtually, get to meet in person, or other people that we don't get a chance to hang out with very much. I mean, Roshani Singhani came from literally around the world, as far away as you could get from San Diego, from Mumbai, India, and she had to travel back, and that's quite the schlep for her. But she made it 2 times in a row, and her and I have chatted on the show before, like how empowering it is to get in a room full of like-minded people who are all trying to understand this kind of stuff and move a message forward. It's pretty powerful. I really like that part of it as well, the socializing and getting to catch up with everybody while we're there.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned Rashani. I loved her presentation, and I had the opportunity to speak to her a couple of months prior to the conference, and I love her take on various aspects of coaching, including motivational interviewing. And I had the opportunity to listen to her a few years back, and she really made a mark on me. And so I love being able to just catch up and try to improve my knowledge. As you mentioned, I'm now working as a health coach a metabolic health coach in the Ovadia Heart Health Telemedicine practice, something that I really never dreamed of doing years ago. In fact, 10 years ago, I was certainly not in a position to coach anybody on anything related to lifestyle. And first, I took care of a lot of the aspects of my own life, and then I got really curious about what it is that, what are the things, the ingredients that go into taking control of your lifestyle and your health and your fitness. And it's really kind of consumed a lot of my life for the last 7 years. And so now getting the opportunity to coach other people, and I enjoy helping other people, but I've also found that it's a huge personal learning experience every day. Is I try to see what I can take away from every interaction that I have, and the the 4 or 5 days at San Diego was a very deeply immersive and very rewarding experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, all of us were looking forward to Dave Feldman's presentation of the Keto CTA trial, additional AI learnings that came from that trial, preliminary results. Dr. Adrian Sotomoda gave an amazing presentation related to that as well. There were lots of very technical and medical centric kind of presentations, a lot of stuff around neuroscience on that first day. And that's all great. And we're all learning that stuff. And it's amazing. And you're talking about the coaching aspect and Rashani's presentation in particular. Like none of that other technical stuff matters if you and I as coaches can't help the people that we coach to remain motivated and to continue working to a goal. Like if I can't cross that bridge and I'm just talking at somebody, telling them all the ways that I know more than them about different things and telling them the ways they should change their life and you need to do this and that and the other. Like if I can't cross that run bridge, it doesn't matter what I know about keto, CTA, and lean mass hyperresponders, and whether LDL cholesterol is causative of heart disease, and some of these other technical things. And so her presentation just always, it's very similar to what she did last year. This year was a little bit more practical, and she made people pair up and actually run through the practice. And it's so helpful. I told her after the presentation, and I'm just thinking back, like even in that 1 week when I was guilty of doing that, like somebody that I did a consult with, and I think, oh, like I know where they can improve, and I tell them how they can improve. And it's like, idiot, like you're not following the right thing to make that person be motivated to want to improve. And so for all the wonderful presentations, hers always stands out to me because it's so helpful, not just for coaching, but even just like simple human communication.
Yeah, I've learned so much just by constantly having these conversations like what we're having right now. I've learned about the importance of listening, and not just talking. And it doesn't just go for coaching. I mean, like when you have the opportunity to be face to face with someone who has a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding of science or behavioral science or whatever the case may be, you know, I know I used to spend a lot more time talking and thinking about what I was going to say next. And um, just, I've learned that listening, especially when you're a coach, sometimes the patient or the client will tell you the solution to their problem, and they don't even realize that they have it. And that's magic for me. I mean, when they tell me the solution, and I just have to ask a question or maybe help them rephrase it, and all of a sudden I could see the light go on in their eyes, like I knew it all along. I just didn't know the you know some of the nuance or the context. Um, and then you talk about the science of a presentation of a symposium like this. There is a lot of high level science, and people will go into the weeds and nitpick over little details, and that can be very important at times. Some of these details are important for larger societal populations, but we have to remember that there's nuance and context and individuality, and some of that stuff doesn't matter to the individual so much as a specific, there might be some little thing that they're not doing or not realizing, or a question they're not asking. And so anyway, we have to just find the nuance, find the context, and help people find the plan that addresses their individual needs.
Yeah, I love that, man. And again, you were very busy. So if I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize. One of my other favorite presentations was Belinda Fettke's presentation about the blue zones. It was so wonderful to get to meet her, to talk about a schlep to get there. She came from Tasmania, not exactly around the corner. And she gave a wonderful presentation. The blue zones have been kind of a pet passion of mine, and bashing the concept has been one of my favorite things to do over the years on this show. Did you get to catch much of her presentation? And if so, was there anything that you remember learning for the first time that you didn't know about the blue zones? Again, I know this is really putting you on the spot. You were
No,
very
no.
busy.
I did have the opportunity to talk to Belinda Fettke at the conference, and I've interviewed both her and Gary Fettke in the past. And some of the things that she talked about in the presentation she's been working on for a long time. So I'm fascinated. I don't remember exactly when I learned what, but yeah, it's an example of, you know, some a group of people has an agenda and they want to push their agenda, and they sometimes will mold the so-called facts around their agenda. And sometimes you find out that the facts aren't really facts, or there's circumstances that make those facts misleading. Certainly the idea of groups of people without birth certificates, and then ultimately having, and there's so much of it. I mean, there's religious reasons why people want to push forward certain dietary patterns and so forth. I find it fascinating, and I'm always interested in learning about the reasons why things happen. And I try not to invest myself too much in some of that history when it comes to the individual things. I mean, like, um, I was, I was never once I found a low carb diet, there's no temptation for me to go back to eating a plant-based diet, which I did for a long time. And I don't really care what some religion says about, what I should eat or shouldn't eat. I've kind of found what works, but I am fascinated by what influences our decisions and societal norms, and what gets pushed, what gets included in guidelines, what doesn't, what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say, and how sometimes factors that have nothing to do with your well-being are being pushed forward as something that you need to do for your health. And so I do very much appreciate the work that she's done.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, to think that either one of our cities could pay the Blue Zones project several $1 million for basically consultancy work to become Blue Zone accredited. It's another business, and regardless of how it started out, it just kind of became its own little concept, and it's totally different. I remember it was, I believe, Dr. Bill Schindler that called it like a bait and switch, where they invite you in with the concept like you were describing, and try to convince you that it's plant-based diet when that's nowhere near the case. So anyway, I appreciate your review of the symposium. Like I said, you were quite busy and running around and taking photos and doing interviews and editing stuff, which I know people appreciated. But yeah, it was great to see you there. You look like you're in amazing shape. I know you're 61 now. Well, we talked about it in our last episode, episode 325. We talked about a few points in the introduction, but before we dive in, why don't you just share your story with us? It can be a Reader's Digest version of how you were able to turn your health around.
Well, yeah, I've talked a lot in the past about the fact that when I was 51, um, I was at my mother's house. I hadn't been on a scale um, in, yeah, who knows, maybe more than a year. And I figured I probably weighed about 250 or something like that, which would have been disturbing to find out. But I stepped on the scale in her condo, and it went up to 278, and my mind was blown, and I was very disappointed, to say the least. And um, took me a while to really figure out what I was doing. In fact, I didn't really, I didn't discover the low carb diet until a few years later, but um, that was the start. I eliminated sugary soda immediately after that, and I ended up taking off about 20 to 25 pounds pretty quickly. And then I stumbled around, and I was still messing around with a lot of various diets, including plant-based things that sometimes produced short-term weight loss, a lot of hunger and cravings, a lot of not feeling as good as I should. And it was in 2018, so I guess I was about 54 when I found Gary Taubes's book, and it instantly resonated with me, and I started eating a low carb diet like within 2 days of getting that book, and I've really never turned back. I ended up losing 5 or 6 pounds a month right up until I had lost the full 80 pounds, and I was down at a healthy weight for the first time in a very long time. And that was really what once I got down there, because I had unsuccessful efforts in the past where I'd lost 50 or more pounds and lost control and gained it all back and then some. So I was determined to figure out a way to maintain that weight loss. But then I also said to myself, there's other things that I've been um, less than optimal, far less than optimal at, like cardiovascular fitness, resistance training, and other areas of my life. Sleep was poor, and I didn't always feel very well. I had a lot of problems with headaches and other things that were a result of poor lifestyle choices. And I kind of made a resolution to really get everything in order and really just make a lifelong journey out of trying to see how good I could make my life through intelligent choices with relation to exercise, activity, what I ate, how much I got to sleep, stress levels, things like that.
I was
So
hosted
that's,
on a podcast. Yeah, no, I love that story. It's one of my favorites. I was asked on a podcast I was hosted on earlier today of all the lifestyle components, put them in buckets, right? Like sleep is one, exercise is one, stress management could be one, whatever mindset piece you want to put on there is one. Nutrition. He asked me, what I thought was the most important one. I told him everybody's a little bit different. Everybody has different like access points into this stuff. But I have by and large found that if you can pull the nutrition lever, it's easier to get some of those other levers to be pulled kind of more easily on their own. Is that something that you found? It sounded like that was kind of the order that things went for you.
well, I've learned over the last few years, but even my learning has taken off at a exponential level now that I'm coaching um, between 10 and 15 different patients a week. Um, and and I'm learning that there are certain patterns and trends that you see, but that everybody has a different weak point or weakest link. And um, I've I've seen people where they've got everything nailed down except for their sleep is utter chaos. And so talking to them about nutrition isn't really the thing. It's like if we can solve the sleep problem, um, their whole life will change. I mean, if you're getting, say, 3 hours of sleep a night because of various reasons, and I've heard a number of different reasons why people have atrocious sleep. Um, Sleep becomes the most important thing. For me, it was nutrition was the key focus point in the beginning because when you weigh 278 pounds, clearly you're doing and I wasn't built like an NFL player. I, uh, I was doing something wrong, and my nutrition and my body composition were resulting in problems for me. So yeah, I would hesitate to tell everyone that it's nutrition. I mean, some people drink too much. I guess that's part of nutrition. Some people, they don't have any sort of an issue with weight, but they don't do any sort of activity. So there's nuance and context, individuality. Um, but yes, I mean, you're correct that for me, um, finding and dialing in my nutrition was like the first domino that I was able to get moving, and then everything else kind of fell into line behind that.
Yeah. And given especially what we know now about things like cancer, which you had to deal with yourself, finding this lifestyle and getting the sugar out of your diet ended up being a huge part of probably why you're still here. We don't want to speculate about how it would have gone without that, but how do you think that metabolically the diet had played a role in the cancer scare that you dealt with several years ago?
Yeah, I finished losing the weight like 1 or 2 months before getting diagnosed. And for me, I was very, very fortunate. I ended up getting chemo and radiation for 7 weeks. It was a very unpleasant time in my life, but ultimately, I've been cancer-free for more than 6 years now. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about gratitude and priorities. And, the idea, I started thinking a lot when I was first diagnosed about what I was most worried about, when I thought, early on, I didn't have any guarantees that there were some scary times. And there were times when in that first month or two where I was led to believe that things might be a lot worse than they turned out to be. Um, and I was like, what is the worst part about this? And I started thinking about the regret that I would have um, with my life when if I had a terminal illness, what would my regrets be, and what are my opportunities right now to do something about that? And I just I vowed to myself that I don't have control over this illness. I have no control other than, I mean, I can do the treatment, I can do everything they ask me to do, but I don't get to determine whether it works out favorably or not. I can only do the best I can. But I started realizing that the worst thing in the world for me would be to have regrets on my deathbed. And I promised myself that no matter what happened, I was going to live every day that I had the best I could, and do that for the rest of my life, no matter what the outcome was. And so it turned out that I got through the cancer, and I'm cancer free. And I've never forgotten that. It's been 6.5 years, I guess, but I try to wake up every day with the idea that we don't know how much time we have. None of us do, no matter how old we are. And we can only do the best we can to make the most of what we have. And to me, that's been very important. So I try to um, spend more time enjoying the moment with the people around me, and doing things that I truly believe are valuable and rewarding for both me and for the other people around me. And it's made a huge difference in my life.
It really shines through too. Like when you post something on Twitter about how you're enjoying a run with your wife, like I can tell it's really sincere. Like you don't take that for granted hardly ever, and it's such an easy thing to do. We think the people around us are going to be around forever. The day after day kind of grind of everything goes on and on and on, and we don't realize that at some point everything around us is going to be gone. Everything you love and cherish, and from objects to the place you live to the people around you, they're all going to be gone. And so what an amazing perspective. And I think I would have enough mindfulness to carry that forward for about like half a day before I forgot it again. So to see you keeping that top of your mind and continuing to live your life that way is very inspiring.
Well, when you get, I mean, there were that some portions of that cancer journey, uh, I'll never forget. I mean, I remember walking around. I was at a football game. I used to photograph football games as part of my work and part of my hobby. And I was at a football game with it was a high school game, full crowd, loud noises and everything. And I realized that everything was blank. Everything was silent. I was thinking about my cancer diagnosis, and I was thinking about the future. And it's just so, we 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 don't we don't in I guess some people do it naturally. They have gratitude to begin with. I don't know. I know that I was taking far too much for granted. And um and when you mentioned my wife, going for a run with my wife, that's been a very important part of, it's been great for our health. It's a great de-stressor. We go for runs together. We've been doing this for many years now. And that started after I was laying on the couch one day about a month or so after I got out of cancer treatments, and I was still like fatigued and weak. And she said, "Do you want to go for a run?" And I probably had turned her down on a couple previous days, and she went out for a run. And on this one day, I said, "You know what? I'm going to give it a try. I feel like crap. I'm going to go for a run anyway." We went out for a run. I made it to a mile, and I couldn't go any further. And I said, "Just go ahead. I'll be fine. And I'll walk." And I did that. And I do a lot of, I made a lot of vows to myself. Well, one of my vows at that point was I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to go for a run with somebody like, and if there's any, unless there's some real legitimate reason, like I've got a, appointment or something that I had already been pre-existing, I'm not going to sit on the couch and waste the opportunity to go for a run with my daughter or my wife or my son. And that resolution has been important too. We've done a lot of good stuff. We trained for our first half marathon, my first half marathon together. My wife had done a few previously. I had never run that far in my life. And then a few months later, my son asked if we were interested in running the Los Angeles Marathon with him. And I looked at my wife and I thought she was going to be like, that's crazy. And she said that she was up for it. And I was like, well, I can't say no to that. So the idea of running a marathon was insane to me at age 58. And we trained through the winter. I don't think we missed a workout. I actually had hernia surgery on like January 3rd of that year, 2023. And I was scheduled for a 13.1 training run, 13.1 mile training run on the following Saturday. So that was 4 days later. I ran 13 miles, 4 days after a double hernia surgery. That's how, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone else. And my surgeon thought I was nuts when I told her that after the fact. But in all fairness to me, she had said that I could get into walking and running if comfort permitted. So I just did what I felt like doing.
Wow. Well, good for you, man. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is all the things you've incorporated as far as the movement and exercise pieces you brought into your life. A lot of people get into running and they don't do the strength training, or a lot of people do the strength training and then they don't do the, quote unquote, like cardiovascular type of exercise. And you've been able to kind of do both simultaneously. I'm just wondering, like, what kinds of lessons have you learned through, trying to make yourself very strong with the strength training, but also, doing fun things and getting out and moving in a different way, completely different way with the running. How have you been able to marry those two pieces together?
Well, I've got a pretty open mind about things. I have, I think that um, balance in life is kind of important. And I suspect that humans were meant to do a lot of things. Being strong seems like a logical thing to pursue. And I know from talking to people like Dr. Ben Bickman or Dr. Ben Bakikio or other leaders in the space, both in terms of nutrition and in fitness, that strength and muscle mass are highly correlated with quality of life, health span, and lifespan. And then I also know that there are many scientific studies that support the idea that VO2 max is very highly correlated with health span and lifespan. So um, I I just feel as if I know intuitively that it's important that I do at least some level of both. And um, the idea I mentioned weak links before. I think that putting all your energy in one area, unless if you're a competitive marathoner and either you're driven by it as a hobby or it's your, say, you make money off it or something, I understand why you would prioritize distance running above all else. But aside from somebody like that, I think we're best off by having good cardiovascular fitness and good strength and muscle mass. And I found that you can achieve like a very large percentage of your potential without like you might you might sacrifice a little bit of the gains that you could get in resistance training if you do a lot of running, but you're not going to sacrifice very much. If you do the kind of training that I do, where I'm running like maybe 15 to 25 miles a week when I'm at the higher end, and my resistance training, I'm working out 4 or 5 days a week. Sometimes I really push hard, but one doesn't hurt the other. And so I feel like I pay attention to what the experts say. I talk to a lot of experts. I try not to follow just one person. I'm friends with and have talked with, people like Zach Bitter, who's a former world record holding ultra marathoner, and Brady Homer, who's a very good marathoner. I've gotten advice from people like that. I know that for me, I'm never going to be a incredible distance runner, but I can get the benefits from having good cardiovascular fitness. I don't know if I'm rambling too much, but the idea of being pretty good at a lot of things, I think, is beneficial for your overall health. And I'm a big believer in finding things that you enjoy. I do enjoy resistance training, and I work hard to figure out ways that I can keep it enjoyable and fun. Doing challenges. Sometimes I'll do push-up challenge or pull-up challenges. Sometimes I'll do that with other people that I've met online or people that I know in person. I sign up for a half marathon every now and then. I've run half marathons with my daughter, my wife, and my son. I've done fitness challenges, both involving running and other things online with people on X. Keeping it fun is, doing different things and pushing yourself. At 61, you can't just keep progressing across the board at everything. You sort of hit plateaus, but you can experience gains. Like right now I'm doing push-ups. I'm going to try to get 100 push-ups in 5 minutes. I can't do it right now. I got 79 the other day, but I can tell you I'm going to get it. And so that's what, those are some of the things that keep it fun and keep it going. And I'm going to do a half marathon on September 28th with my wife and my daughter.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. That's really well said. I get so myopic and locked into like one thing. Like when I learned about high intensity training and the type of training that Dr. Ben Bokikio gives to his people and how they define exercise, I get so locked into that I want to do that myself. I want to do only that with my clients. And I forget the other components, that there are other things that people like to do. You want to continue to make things fun and interesting and introduce variety, even though if it's not the most logical, best designed strength training program when you're incorporating some of those other things. And you're right, like you might be making some compromises, but overall, globally, people are not. I don't have anybody who's training to win marathons and half marathons. You know what I mean? Like it's not the biggest deal for me if I'm staying off of carbohydrates. I know it could cost me a little bit of performance in hockey, but like I'm playing a drop-in game once a week with my buddies. It's not like the biggest thing if I don't have the highest top-end performance. And I don't think it's a very big sacrifice to make sure my mental health, for example, stays really, really high. So I think it's a nice way to think about being a generalist, the way that humans are, and be good at lots of different things rather than just be great at like one or two things. So I love your approach there. You mentioned VO2 max. I'm curious to know, since that was the thing that I was doing in my entire career was measuring people on VO2 max. What have you learned about the importance of that number, and how are you tracking that number? Are you doing VO2 max tests themselves where they're actually measuring oxygen, or using predicted values based on devices that we have that give us really, really good predictions?
Yeah, I have not ever done a sophisticated test for VO2 max. I have a Garmin, and I figure that for my purposes, progress is really the only thing that I'm concerned with. So I
Right.
assume that, and even if if I didn't get a VO2 max, um, intuitively I would figure that if I'm doing the same distance and the same speed run under the same conditions, say humidity and heat, but my heart rate is now lower than it used to be, that I'm progressing in terms of my cardiovascular capacity. But when I see the VO2 max go up a point, certainly makes me happy. And I always qualify if I share my Garmin estimated VO2 max. I qualify that with the fact that I know it's not accurate. It's not just like a CGM, which measures your interstitial fluid, isn't telling you your absolute blood glucose reading. It's giving you an estimate that can be helpful. That's what you're getting with a Garmin VO2 max. But I definitely appreciate becoming having a larger capacity for running, being able to run further at the same time or further at a faster time. It's amazing what the body can do. Like and it's also amazing. It's amazing how far you can regress over the winter if you don't make a practice of doing it. Like I ran a half marathon last October, and I had been averaging 10,000 steps a day for 6 months. And for whatever reason, when November 1st came around, I slacked off like the whole winter long, and my my capacity to run diminished greatly, and it took me probably like probably 8 weeks to get back what I lost. And now I'm back where I was, and maybe even progressing further. Little lesson learned. Maybe this winter I will make a point of, getting out and running, even if it's cold, and even if it's dark out. I'll figure something out, and you learn as you go.
Did I hear you comment on another podcast that also in the off season, your nutrition wasn't as on point and you ended up gaining like 10 to 15 pounds?
I've gained. Yeah, I try to manage everything. Um, but yeah, I've gained 10 or 15 pounds from Thanksgiving to New Year's. The year before last was particularly brutal. I shared a lot of that publicly. I mean, um, it doesn't take much for someone that has a capacity to eat like I do to really pack on some pounds. And I worry about it a lot less when I try to eat good foods. Um, I try not to worry about eating too much. Um, when I'm doing the exercise that I have committed to. If I'm running um, the distance, and I'm doing regular resistance training, and I've got good strength and muscle mass, and I gain a little weight, I don't finesse or obsess about it, uh, but but I try not to let too many things slide at one time. And there's a limit. Like I think at this stage, with the muscle that I've built up, I initially went down to about, well, I say I lost 80 pounds. I initially went down even below that, um, uh, but I realized that I probably had gone a little further than I wanted to, and that's when I started trying to build muscle back, and I did gain um, some muscle. So I think my optimal weight right now is probably between 205 and 208. So that would be about 70 pounds lighter than my high weight, but I've definitely added a good amount of muscle to my frame.
Yeah, you have. I can tell you that in person, meeting you in person, that you have quite a bit of muscle, which I wanted to ask you about as well. But I was asking you about the weight because oftentimes people miss this. When I was certifying other personal trainers to do VO2 max test, metabolic testing, it was a question that everybody would miss constantly. The VO2 max formula, the number that most people are used to seeing, is the milliliters of oxygen that you can take in every single minute. And that's what people think. Like, what is VO2 max? Well, it's the amount of oxygen you can take and deliver into your body, but they missed the third component of the formula. There's one more component, and that's another divided by it, and it's kilograms. And it's kilograms of your body weight, meaning that your VO2 is relative to your own body weight. So the two ways that you can make that number go better is to improve your cardiovascular efficiency by getting back into running, or to simply lower the denominator and put in a lower weight. Like if you weigh less, if you and I were doing the same thing and I weighed 20 pounds less than you, but we had the same lung capacity, my VO2 score would be higher because I've got the lower denominator. So you probably made an even bigger jump than you assumed if you didn't change the weight on your Garmin, and it just took your numbers based on a projected, amount of oxygen delivery and heart rate without taking in the weight component as well. And I think it's something that I think is interesting, and I think a lot of people miss when they say that VO2 max is the greatest number for longevity. You're also self-selecting people that weigh a lot less. If you weigh 400 pounds, it doesn't matter what your lung capacity is going to be. Your VO2 max is going to be super, super low. And so, as much as I want people to know, like, yeah, you got to improve your cardiovascular health and efficiency, and that's really important. But remember that the number is based on the number of your weight. And I know you know that, but I think it's interesting for the listeners who sometimes don't consider that component of it.
No, that's a great point. And yeah, and I probably I definitely don't adjust my Garmin from week to week. My weight, I don't even remember the last time I've adjusted it, and I don't even know if I don't even know what it's set for currently. It's probably around my 208 pounds. I'm a few pounds more than that right now, but but anyway, yeah, that's a great point. Um, let's see. I don't know what. Go ahead, Ed.
No, it's interesting. Not many people do change the weight in the Garmin, which means if you're getting better scores, you are like you know that is your, it's not based on weight that you're getting better scores, it's based on your aerobic efficiency. And
Right.
exactly what you said, this was the thing. Like if you came in and did a VO2 test with me and I said, okay, here are your results, let's go over all this, I want you to come back in 3 months and do this again, the number one thing I would be looking for is improvement. And our reports would show this in the chart, is like, okay, last time you came in, your heart rate was 150 at this step of the test, we were 8 minutes in, the exact same protocol, you were running 6.1 miles an hour at a 1% incline. Well, guess what? You just did that same step on the same test on the same protocol, and your heart rate was actually 140. Or at heart rate 150, where you're running 6.1, now you're running 6.9. So that's an easy way that somebody could tell that they are making improvements. And so it's cool that you recognize that. And if nothing else, that's an easy way that if somebody had a benchmark run or ride or something, like I've got a ride by my house that I do on my bike that's 20 miles. And if it takes me much over an hour, I know my fitness is dropping off. And so you can kind of manage that way without having expensive tests or specialized equipment to be able to get it done.
I love these conversations, and I have these conversations with my wife. She's starting to pay a lot more attention to her heart rate. I think we both went out a few years ago when we started running. We were both running too fast. It was probably because of me, and she was miserable because she was trying to keep up with my unreasonable pace. And it wasn't because I was fitter than her. It was because I was um, pushing myself harder than I should have been, because I felt like there was some um, need to do that. And then I finally, after being lectured by the Zone 2 fanatics for long enough, I finally did a little bit more research into it. And I don't think that it's anyone else's business to tell you what you should be running at, but I did realize that, and I learned this really well through training for the marathon, that um, if you do the miles that are prescribed for fitness program that you've signed on for, you do those miles that you previously weren't doing. You don't have to do them at any specific speed in order to see some dramatic gains. Like in an 18-week period, if you culminate with a 40-mile week, even if it's a relatively slow pace, your body is adapting and it's going to be fitter. And the fact, I mean, I'm no amazing marathoner, but the fact that I was able to run 26.2 miles side by side with my wife, and do it at about a 10:35 pace, um,
Uh,
you know, was, it's like, um, it's just mind boggling, because, when I was 10 years earlier, I couldn't run a mile at a 10:30 pace. So to do that, it's just incomprehensible, the amount that your body will adapt to the
totally.
pressure that you put on it.
Totally. And that's why that type of zone one, zone two training that you're talking about pairs up so well with a low carbohydrate diet. That's how I found a low carbohydrate diet to begin with. Is why if I'm training really hard and my heart rate's really high, I'm burning primarily glucose. I'm burning primarily carbohydrate. Everybody knows that if you do these lengthy events and you're running on carbohydrates, you're going to run out. You don't have an infinite amount of storage. It's enough to maybe fuel like an hour or two of exercise before it runs out. For most men, it's about 2,000 calories that you have. And so you're stuck with this terrible decision of, okay, am I going to be fueling a bunch of sugar while I go? How am I going to digest that? What GI issues are going to come along with that as I'm shoving, carbs down my throat the whole time? You're just kind of on that knife edge, or you ease off the training, go down to your math heart rate, your 180 minus your age heart rate to find where you metabolically efficient, spend more time there, reduce the carbohydrates in your diet, and now your body's burning the stored fat that you already have. And even a Tour de France cyclist would not die if they went a few days without eating, because they still have tens of thousands of calories of fat on the body, and that can be used for fuel. So yeah, it's super cool that you were able to find all of that. And I agree with you. I love these conversations and getting a little in the weeds of some of this stuff. I did want to ask you as well. You have people have the preconceived notion of once you get past a certain age, you're not able to add muscle. What would you like to say to that?
Well, I'm sure there is an age, but I also am sure that I haven't reached it yet. Um, so I'm well aware that there's limitations that age imposes on us, but most of us, in America have not come close to the scratching the surface of the potential that we have. So, if you were a former, superb high-level athlete, you are not going to be able to maybe equal the levels that you were doing in your 20s when you're in your late 40s or your 50s or whatever. But for the average American, there's so much untapped, and even people that used to be athletes who've let themselves go, I think many of them would surprise themselves at how much of it they could get back. I mean, you're never going to be an Olympian again when you're 60 years old, but you certainly can be in good shape and fit and enjoy life and have do some pretty amazing things. And I've working, both the people that I've engaged with at these conferences on social media platforms like X, and the people that I now work with as a health coach. I've seen some people in some pretty tough spots who have a long way to go, but I've seen some people do some, I mean, absolutely amazing things, like go from full on type 2 diabetes with a 11 A1C, and in as little as just a few months completely reverse the course of that um, rather significant disease to the point where it's in complete remission or reversal. Um, and I've seen people do other equally impressive things, like regain the ability to engage in activities, whether it's resistance training or 10,000 steps a day, or running, or cycling across uh, you know, I, one gentleman that I worked with, he's about my age, and he's regularly cycles across the state of Michigan on his bike. It's like we can do these things, and we have to be intelligent. And I'm a big believer in risk reduction and being safe and everything like that. But if you do common sense things, you can engage in some pretty amazing physical activities.
Yeah, totally agree. Speaking of health coaching, I did want to talk to you about your journey through health coaching. Tell us what that process was like when you decided to get certified, and what were some of the. I know you have a few now. Where did you decide to go to get some of these certifications, and what was the reason for that?
The first thing I did, I've been involved with Low Carb USA and SMHP. I really believe in both of those organizations. SMHP is a not-for-profit. The mission is to promote um, science-based information around therapeutic carbohydrate reduction, and um, use dietary and other lifestyle approaches to improve metabolic health. And that involves a whole long list of things like type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, which can't be reversed but can be managed. And I've seen cases, incredible stories of people that use low carb diets to manage their type 1 diabetes and live a life that's, with a H1C, H HbA1c that's lower than most people that don't have that disease. Um, so I ended up going to the training program that the SMHP has, results in a metabolic health practitioner certification. It's a lot of courses that you have to take and get CME credits. I got that, and then um, I ended up getting to know and work with Dr. Ovadia's metabolic health telemedicine practice. And at one point, about a year and a half ago, he asked me if I was interested in becoming a health coach. And I told him I was. And we talked about, how I could do that. And one of the ways was taking some courses with Primal Health Coach Institute. So I got certified as a master health coach. So I did a lot of education before I became a health coach. It was, a process that was more than a year, but it was, on the side while I was doing my other full-time work. So um, in January of this year, I started working as a health coach in the practice and eased into it kind of gradually over the last 6 months. And I'm now it's a fairly significant part of my daily work.
That's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that second certification that Dr. Ovadia got? I'm less familiar with that one.
The Primal Health Coach.
Primal. Yeah.
Um, Mark Sisson is the name behind it, and
Yeah.
he's got a great organization. He's got some great coaches in the program, and there were actually two parts to this. I got the basic metabolic, basic primal health coach certification, and then I went for the more advanced master health coach certification. That involved a lot of one-on-one coaching via Zoom. It was a 6-month program, several months at least. Every twice a week at night, I was participating in these programs. So we learned a lot about the underlying philosophies of primal, which are very they work well with um, the low carb things that I'm familiar with. Like there's some nuance. Primal has some things that are a little different than maybe what a lot of people on a ketogenic or a carnivore diet would have. But the philosophies are very compatible, and their coaching program is excellent. They do a lot of things that are very compatible with what I've heard from Rashani. Um, Motivational interviewing, very important to be a good listener, very important to get buy-in from the patient or the client, where the patient is not being um, led to the solution, but is involved as a, you know, the patient is the most important partner in this exercise of trying to get to where they want to get. If they don't buy in, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, good call. Well, yeah, I didn't realize it was Mark Sissons. I'm sure that was a wonderful certification to get. It's just not one that I'd use very much. What have been some of your challenges becoming a coach? What are you finding working with people? I know that you kind of consider yourself um, there, I guess. Like you've made it to where you want to be. Now it's about maintaining. You have no intention of leaving what you've been doing, but the way I see you, and I believe the way you see yourself is kind of in that light of like, I made it. Am I done? I'm not really done, but I don't really have anything that I'm, really pushing for at this point. When for you to be in that position and working with people through your coaching, what kinds of challenges do you see with them?
Well, first of all, the idea of being there, having finished, um, is never going to happen for me. It's like it's a journey. I realized that 3 weeks into the low carb diet, that it was a mind change for me. Like knowing, like accepting the fact that I'm on a journey took all the pressure off. Um, like I'm not trying to get to a certain place by a certain time. I picture it more like being on a hike where you don't have a deadline. You're just going to enjoy the hike, try to get to see different things and experience different things. You want to do it well, but you want to enjoy the trip. And as far as challenges in coaching, um, well, one thing that I've kind of resolved for myself is one thing that I've added to my list of things I want to do is I want to become the best coach that I can possibly be. And I know I'm not there yet, but I also know that I'm a lot better than I was 2 months ago. And I feel like I'm pretty good at this, and I'm on a great team. That's one thing that's excellent about working within the Ovadia telemedicine practice, is that there's excellent medical professionals and other expert coaches on the team, and a front office that is doing a great job of helping patients with this experience. So with that said, I'm able to learn every day. If there's something I don't know, I have resources right around me. I can answer questions that you know go far beyond what I've learned. And a health coach, is not a medical professional, but I'm learning a lot about the medical side of things that I never would have had the opportunity to learn if I was, say, to go into health coaching on my own. And that was never actually something that I've had experience running my own business in my life. Not something that is ever going to be on my plate again. I want to become the best health coach I can be, and figure out ways that I can sort of just help more people more effectively. So that's what I'm going after. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but if I didn't, feel free to follow up.
Oh, that's great. No, you mentioned the team. If nothing else, you get to hang out with Krishna Hanks all the time. You can't get any better than that. She's awesome.
I do. It's interesting. I don't get to hang out with her in the practice, um, in the telemedicine part, as much as I'd like, but she's also our employee wellness director, and she does a weekly live stream, which I do the technical stuff in the back. I get to listen to her talk to experts every week. So I do learn a tremendous amount from Krishna and our other health coach, Jen Cleveland, who is a 30-year expert she's in the field of, she's a registered dietitian, and she's an expert in type 2 diabetes. So these people have knowledge on subjects, and the amount of time that they've been doing it, that's really incredible. Kristen has been a health coach for decades, and she's excellent at what she does.
Yeah, her and Robert getting to hang out with them at this symposium was super fun. Also, love those guys. Okay, well, you have a signature question that I was going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to ask it because I'm going to botch it and not get it exactly right anyway. Tell us your signature question that you always ask everybody, and has been kind of a passion of yours of trying to chase down with all these years of coaching and your own health journey and getting curious about everybody else's health journey. And yeah, ask the question of yourself, and I would love to hear your answer.
Are you referring to the question about what makes someone um, have a better chance of succeeding?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
I've had the opportunity to interview like literally scores of medical professionals, like you have. Probably haven't had in nearly as many interviews as you have, but I try to ask them every chance I get, what are the things that separate those who succeed from those who don't succeed or don't have a positive experience with um, lifestyle change or whatever. And I'm constantly trying to figure out what it is, and I've learned that those there's not just one answer to that, but um, there are a few things that I've learned. One is a person needs to have hope that the the thing that they're about to do has a chance of working. Um, and for a lot of people, they don't have that. That's a missing ingredient. And I think success when it comes to like weight loss, for example, if you don't think that the dietary changes that you're making are going to succeed, I think you've basically failed before you start. And if you've tried to lose weight through calorie restriction alone, um, 20, 30, 40 times in your life, and you failed every single time, and your doctor says, hey, you got to cut calories in order to lose weight, I don't think there's a chance that that's going to work on the 51st try. Um, so we need to give the patient a path that has some reasonable chance of succeeding. And for people that have failed when it comes to, and I'm not going to argue that calorie restriction can't work, but um, it's not something that typically works by itself, and focusing on things like satiety and the right nutrient combination, the right macro combination, and getting to a place where you don't have the hunger and cravings. That's really important. So they need to have hope that the thing will work. They need to have some discipline. They need to have an organized way of approaching it and follow some basic rules, whatever they may be. They should, if they have the opportunity to work with a coach and figure out a game plan, you need to have a plan that you're going to follow, whatever it is, and it's different for every individual. But and then let's see if there's any other things that I think are most important. I mean, you gotta have some sort of an accountability system. I talk to patients about this all the time. I mean, uh, are you going to check in once a week to give yourself a scorecard? Like, are you doing it or are you not doing it? If you have a set of rules, and you're following them, then you say, am I getting the results that I want? And if you're not getting the results that you want, uh, it's really going to be two things. You're not following them as tight as you should be, or the rules are not where they need to be. You need to revise the rules. So I'm kind of pragmatic about it and try to work with somebody in a way that you take one thing at a time. You make manageable changes. Don't take on too much too fast, um, and then just keep, being that it's a lifelong journey, you need to check back regularly and make sure that you're on the right course. And if you find that you're drifting off course, you need to have a plan to get yourself back where you need to be. So that those check-ins can't be every 6 months, because too much can go wrong in 6 months. For me, it has to be a weekly thing. And that's what I work with patients on.
Amazing. Wow, that's amazing. And I agree with you. I think that hope piece is so critical, and your story is so inspirational and gives people that hope. So I really feel like you're in your life calling by doing some of the coaching. I know you're very busy with so many different things, but to add that in, I think you're going to change a lot of lives. And so I've really appreciated this chat. Again, I know you're super busy and have a lot going on, but I'm glad you took some time to chat with us today. I know our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this. But for now, Chris, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Best place to find me is on X. The handle is Biggest Comeback. You could find me on LinkedIn, Chris S. Cornell. You can find me on Facebook, Chris S. Cornell. And if you'd like to subscribe to my Biggest Comeback email, you can find that in the bio on X. It's pretty easy to find. I think I'm also Chris S. Cornell on Instagram. I think the link to subscribe is on the bio there as well.
Cool. We'll link all of that up. If for no other reason, you have to go follow Chris at Biggest Comeback, because when I get stuck in my carnivore mentality and I just need a different way to do something a little bit differently, especially with like burger patties, I always try to remember to go to your page, because you have such a great way of dressing up a burger patty in a way that I would not think to do, and it makes things really accessible and easy. I think oftentimes we get locked into thinking we have to do a carnivore diet, for example, very, very strictly, and you've been able to open things up and have different garnishes and different ways of doing things to mix up the flavors. So I love doing that. And for no other reason to follow you is that, plus seeing all the inspirational posts and fun runs with your wife. So anyway, Chris, thank you so very much for everything you do. And thank you for taking time today to come back on our show. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. You have a really great podcast, and I know you have a lot of fans. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. It was an honor to host you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.